Glory to Jesus Christ. My name is Michael Braceland. I'm a deacon candidate with the Archieparchy of Pittsburgh and currently working at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, and serving the Waco Byzantine community down here. I wanted to do a deacon series for our community, which will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. But before I started on the deacon series, I felt that minor orders was very much connected to the diaconate, and I just gave a presentation on minor orders at the Byzantine Catholic Assembly in Whiting, Indiana on July 18th. And I just wanted to give an informal representation of that presentation. I left it mostly unchanged, and I'll also add in some comments here and there if I remember. But mostly this is just an informal representation at my computer just to upload to our community, because I do not know when the recording from the assembly will be released. When it is, I'll share that as well, and we'll put it on our webpage. So getting into the presentation, I pose the question, will revitalizing the minor orders help renew our parishes and vocations? Right? The basic presentation roadmap was looking at data. I did a pretty informal, unstructured qualitative survey that I just, like throwing spaghetti at the wall. I just put it out there and was trying to see what kind of responses I would get, and I got over 100 responses. We'll get into that in a minute, but following that, data is, even though it's qualitative, it's subjective. I really wanted to get into what does the church say, what are these offices, these minor order offices. I wanted to create a hypothetical pathway and a call to action. And at the end of the presentation, I had concluding remarks and a Q&A. Obviously, this is just being informally recorded at my computer, and there's no Q&A, but like I said, I'll share some of those questions and answers that I got at the end of the presentation. They're really fruitful questions that actually bled over into the lobby for a good hour after my presentation. So a lot of good questions. Some things I think I would rethink, but just wanted to give you the actual presentation that I gave. Before I get into the data, though, I wanted to give a little bit of context on why I even asked this question, right? So in summer 2024, we were escaping the immense heat at the seminary in Pittsburgh. We're up there in June, and it was like almost 100 degrees. It was like that this year, 2025 as well. Some people joked that we keep bringing the Texas heat with us up to seminary, but basically, if any of you have been to the seminary, there's a basement. It stays pretty cool down there, and that's where a lot of the guys hang out, and we just sit around talking, ruminating, and as a bunch of guys do, I guess, down in a basement in between classes. And we mostly talk about, solving the world's problems, solving the church's problems, just talking about family life, how much we can't wait to get back home and see our kids and things like that. A lot of these guys coming from very impressive backgrounds, lawyers, executives, tech individuals, professors, businessmen, scientists, and we all fancy ourselves, armchair theologians in some cases. But the skills and perspectives of these men don't need to be buried in the footnotes, so to speak, of the seminary, and I wanted to share some of the perspectives, ideas, and inspirations that we had, and the minor orders was one of those conversations. And we did joke at the time, a lot of things we take for granted today in the world were solved on a napkin in a coffee shop, right? But luckily, we as a church don't need an original idea from a napkin. We have the tradition. Okay? We have the tools, we have the abilities and the demand to maximize the gifts we have. Uh, I could put that as a statement or a question, but I would argue that we have all that, and this is really the central thesis of my presentation today on the gift and importance of minor orders and what it could bring to the modern Byzantine Catholic Church. Okay, so let's just get into the data. 79 active Byzantine Catholic men in good standing, willing to undergo a background check and willing to undergo a multi-year formation program at a local parish with online learning components. That does not seem like a big number. Objectively, it's not. I agree, especially if you're coming from a different ritual tradition like Roman Catholicism. That's a very small number. That's a small number on a weekday mass, right? So in the Byzantine Catholic Church, being a missionary church, very spread out throughout the country, that's really not a small number. We only have, just for perspective, we only have a few hundred priests, and we only have, I think, 80 or so deacons across the entire United States. So this is really not that small of a number. Now, I did get well over 100 participants, but I filtered that data down into 79, obviously in good standing and willing to go through the motions. Okay, so participating, got a pretty even distribution on participation throughout the eparchies. Like I said, it was not a systematic survey. It was not paid. Okay, it was like I said, throwing spaghetti at the wall. Whoever wanted to take it could take it, and this is what I ended up with. I think if I was a little more intentional with Parma and Passaic, probably would have got higher numbers given the higher population volume of those areas. But that's how the data came out. Out of those that were of that 79, 82% said that they'd be interested in becoming a subdeacon, 18% a reader. This is a big one. Would your pastor support you? 90% said absolutely. 10% at the time they took the survey didn't know. I posed the question, would you pay for formation? And I'll get to what those numbers look like in a minute, but 73%, almost 3/4, said that they would pay all out-of-pocket expenses associated with their formation. 22% said they'd like to share it with their parish. What that share distribution looked like was not part of the survey. So I don't know what the thoughts are of that 22% on the shared costs there. Then 5% said that they would not want to contribute to their formation costs. Okay, this is what they were agreeing to. So for reader, about $350. Now, after some of the recommendations from clergy at the conference, or at the assembly, excuse me, that's a very high estimate. It would probably be less than $100, if not free. Okay. With subdeacon, it's a little more involved. There's things connected to Byzantine Catholic Seminary on that. So what they were agreeing to was $4,000 out of pocket for the subdeacon formation. Would you pay in full for ordination travel to your bishop? Okay, so small distinction here. Minor orders are not ordained at the altar like deacons and priests are. Okay, this takes place in the Soleil outside of the holy doors. It is not the same. Different ordination. Okay, so felt like I needed to clarify that point. But 94% said that they would pay in full to travel to their bishop. Okay, that may not seem like a big deal, but any of us that are Byzantine Catholic understand that a lot of places in this country that is a big deal, because that's a plane ticket and a hotel and the whole 9 yards. 6% said they'd like to share the cost. Again, I don't know what their thoughts are on what that shared cost would be. 0 people said that they would contribute nothing. Okay, so got a lot of people willing to travel. And sometimes that's long travel. If you're in, for example, if you're in Texas, like we are, or like I am, excuse me, and I had to travel to Pittsburgh, that's a pretty long trip. So that's what they're agreeing to on that. Do you believe this is a good thing for the church to do? I got a lot of pushback before I started taking data, and people said, well, uh, this is just a distraction. Church doesn't need this. Men are not interested, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I mean, the data just says that's wrong. Okay, 95% say this is a good thing for the church to do. 5% said yes, but with reservations, and I'll get to those reservations shortly. And then nobody said it would be a distraction. If this were available, when would you apply? All right, I wanted to gauge the immediacy of the interest. 66%, so 2/3, said that they would immediately apply if this came available. And then I went 2-year increments after that, and then a 5 to 10 year period. Nobody was after the 10-year period out of the 79. Would diaconal formation impact your decision making? Okay. Minor orders are an extension of the diaconal office, the diaconal ministry of liturgy, word, and charity or service. Okay. So I felt it very prudent to ask this question. You're going to see some overlap with Deacon a little bit later, and why this is part of the Deacon series, frankly. 61% said that they would like to pursue minor orders first, and they were neutral on the diaconate, meaning they were open to the idea, but they were not actively discerning the diaconate. 38% said so almost 40% said they're not called to the diaconate. Okay, they were discerning this as a permanent office, and only one person said that they'd prefer to apply directly to the diaconate program. Only one. So I think sit with that for a second. How many vocations are we missing in our church because we're not meeting men where they are in their discernment? This is really the pivot slide when it comes to data, in my opinion. 78 men are out there that could be serving the church in the minor orders that otherwise are not. And that's a problem. Okay, so some comments on the survey. I believe having readers and subdeacons would substantially add to the richness of an already rich liturgical life. True. That would be a benefit to the faithful. This is wonderful. I do hope it becomes available. I'm sure this is open to men without a college degree. Over 10 people said that. Right now, as it stands, you basically have to have a bachelor's degree in order to pursue a vocation in our church. Are there exceptions? Sure. Okay, but generally you have to have at least a bachelor's degree. And the reality is anybody that's been in parishes recognize there are some wholly intelligent, very capable men that simply just don't have that, and that's okay. They should have this pathway available to them. The church would need to send a strong and clear message. This is going back to the yes with reservation person. The church would need to send a strong and clear message and continued encouragement for those roles in parallel with the reader/subdeacon programs, but we should absolutely bring those practices back for the Ruthenian church. Okay, so some practical considerations here. This is not an exhaustive list of comments. Had well over 100 comments in the survey. I just cherry picked some that would fit on the slide. So why are men interested? In the modern age, there are generational changes, of course, but very few things have stayed the same for men throughout the ages of the church, and that's clarity of mission. However, in the age of globalization, cultural relativism, a vocations crisis, limited number of spiritual directors, etc., many men are faced with a superficial or obscured view of their calling by God. We see this all the time in our parishes. Men need a clear outline that shows them a multiplicity of opportunities to serve, tailored to their particular life circumstances. As it stands, to the men passively or actively discerning, the path is often obscured and perhaps so unclear and ambiguous that he becomes static, typically locking himself in the all too often scene of endless discernment. I know we've heard that many times, to where a young man or a middle-aged man or an older man simply just keeps kicking the can down the road, right? And a lot of that is just the church not meeting them where they're at, and they just don't know what they don't know, right? The church is responsible for building that bridge. Many men are caught in this circular discernment, leading many into a vicious spiral of inaction, self-directing, God forbid, and or convincing themselves that they can serve when they get older and have, quote, more time. The data simply just does not agree with that. It's not true at its heart. It's simply a lack of, like I said, clarity of mission and pathways established by the church. And luckily, the church has already solved this problem in our tradition. In the wisdom of the church and her tradition, she has a history of minor orders that mitigate this very natural tendency. And while some men have clarity of vocation to major orders, countless more men simply are not called to major orders right away and may never be called to such. It's this pathway that can be reintroduced, what this whole presentation is about, frankly, with the aid of the internet and mass communication, which draws men into actively asking the question of God, Lord, what do you want me to do? As St. Paul did in the book of Acts chapter 9, I believe. So you correct me on that. But okay, so what does the church say? So we're moving past the data into what the church says. The minor orders, this is from the instruction for applying the liturgical prescriptions of the Code of Canons of the Eastern Churches. That's a drawn out title. The minor orders and the diaconate are not mere formalities in preparation for presbyteral ordination. They provide a specific service in the church, and as such are to be effectively exercised in a definitive way by those who do not intend to enter the presbyterate. Presbyterate equals priests, for those that were unaware. In this sense, misgivings should not be had towards conferring minor orders on those who comport themselves well, are suitable and appropriately prepared for the responsibility they assume. Thus, the ministers necessary for a dignified and fitting celebration of the liturgy are obtained, avoiding the practice of having ministers of a higher range perform the liturgical functions that should be reserved to those of a lower range, i.e. minor orders, or of permanently appointing to the laity liturgical tasks expected of a minister, practices to be eliminated. I thought this was very fitting from Pope Leo, pretty much right after he accepted the office of the Pope. He had an address to Eastern Catholic churches on May 14, 2025. He says, "It is vital then that you preserve your traditions without attenuating them, for the sake perhaps of practicality or convenience, lest they be corrupted by the mentality of consumerism and utilitarianism." This is important because sometimes we get bogged down with an either-or mentality or a reductionism down to the functions of the office. We have to eliminate that paradigm, that modus from our mind when it comes to the church. Christ established his offices of deacon, priest, and bishop in the church for a reason. Okay, it's not from our own understanding of things that we need to proceed to understand. It's from his perspective. What is he doing and why is he putting these roles here? This is important because this often happens with the diaconate. Maybe not so much in the Byzantine church, but definitely in the Roman church, for example, where the role of the deacon's a little bit more unclear, especially since it was just reinstituted in a permanent capacity 50 years ago, right? So keep that in mind. We can't have a reductionist mentality or a reliance on functionalism only in understanding the purpose of these offices. Okay, so what are the minor orders? What is it? How do we train them? How do we have quality control? We can presuppose at this point there's genuine interest. We have the direction of the church. We also have the tradition. Okay, so the reader, primary job is to read, not rocket science. But they also assist on behalf of the church with education, teaching, and various needs. And they may also be given the faculties to serve non-Eucharistic services, fittingly called reader services, right? That's where we get the name, in the absence of a priest or a deacon. Subdeacon has a little bit more responsibility. They prepare vessels, empty vessels, vestments, the altar area, or cross-bearer. They have unique liturgical roles when it comes to the hierarchical divine liturgy. They also assist with ECF, the formation of the catechumenate, and Bible studies, to name a few. That's not an exhaustive list. One thing to keep in mind with the minor orders is the recorded evidence of minor orders in the church goes back as early as the 2nd century, mid-2nd century, with Justin Martyr, mentioned at length by the church fathers as an important ministry in the church, distinct from the lay faithful. Those holding an office in minor orders are appointed to the ministry proper to their office and historically are an extension or a subclass of the deacon's ministerial responsibilities in liturgy, word, and charity. Okay, again, another reason why this is connected to diaconal formation. Those in minor orders are, like I said before, not ordained in the same way that deacons, presbyters, and bishops are. However, men in minor orders are set apart officially for those specific responsibilities. Reading, teaching, charity, etc., etc. A number of church fathers have mentioned these offices. Justin Martyr, Dionysius, in his ecclesiastical hierarchy, especially as that connects to the diaconal ministry as an extension of the lower Levitical offices, as the deacon is considered the new Levite, so to speak. I will not go into that, but my next video will be on biblical prefigurement of the diaconate, where I'll go into that connection with the Levites and the holy angels that the diaconate has. So put a pin in that one. Hippolytus, the Apostolic Constitutions, Clement, Cyprian of Carthage, St. John Chrysostom, Eusebius, the Seventh Ecumenical Council, and Canons 1, 11, and 14, etc., many more, do mention the minor orders, either in isolation or at length. Okay, so this is a tradition that spans the apostolic church. Yep. Hypothetical formation. I wanted to give something tangible, so I wasn't just giving an academic presentation. That's not what I wanted. I wanted a call to action. So hypothetical formation programming was something I wanted to share at the presentation in Whiting. For reader, MCI formation, directed reading, and practicum. The MCI formation, it was actually recommended that it only be the first 3 courses that are free on MCI. For subdeacon, it's a little bit more drawn out, going into a little more detail on MCI, as well as taking 9 credits or 12 credits, 9 to 12 credits, it depends, with the Byzantine Catholic Seminary online as part of their MAT program that you could either audit or take for credit depending on your academic background. Directed reading, practicum, etc. All right. Support for diaconal vocations. We continue this diaconal trend. helps elevate and distribute ministerial overload and or reach new ministerial offerings at the local level, creates a visible and graduated pathway to major orders for slower discerners, right? Finding the win-win. Adds more well-trained men to the deacon formation program at BCS if applicable. Okay, so I structured the MCI and BCS formation to eliminate the first year of the traditional 4-year diaconal formation program. All right. According to canon law, canon 354, you have to have 3 years of formation. All right. So I only took out the first year. You would basically come in at the beginning of the second year with having already done that first year of deacon formation. The subdeacon training is thorough enough to where it's above and beyond what you get in your first year of the traditional 4-year program. So you're coming in not behind, but probably well ahead of the individuals in the traditional program. Like I said, it's canon 354 that requires the 3 years. Also, I forgot to mention earlier, canon law kicks this to particular law, and the particular law of the question of minor orders, that is, particular law of the Ruthenian Church basically passes the buck to the Council of Hierarchs. So this is a easily solvable issue in the church to make available to individuals. And before I get into this, on the previous slide, I won't go back, but 61%, remember from the data, 61% were open to the diaconate, right? Now, even if you get a percentage of that, a smaller percentage of that, you've still created a pathway for that previously didn't exist for men that have just slightly different discernment models. It's a big jump to go directly into deacon formation from nothing. Okay, it's a big jump to go to seminary for presbyteral formation, right? What we're trying to do is tear down that wall and create a ramp, finding different ways, like I said, to meet men where they are. Okay, so some of the concerns that were posed beforehand was, would men just be trying to draw attention to themselves, misplaced clericalism, pride, power, lack of ecclesiastical management? These are all straw man statements. There's a reason why there's a process for applying, but I did answer that through a central institute. This was another recommendation. The reality is each eparchy could have their own formation program, but what I did was I created a central program that was more marketable, easier to share, easier to gather information on. Individuals can move jobs and move eparchies and continue the program without having to start from square one. It just seemed like a great way to optimize the process, and it just administers the formation and any post-formation that may happen afterwards, which was another recommendation, was to add, following elevation to an office, having a year of follow-on formation, kind of like what we do with after the catechumen is baptized and chrismated and receives the Eucharist, right? It's not like we cut them off. We usually keep going with them, God willing, for the rest of their lives, but usually are very intentional for that year afterwards. Same kind of operation here. Okay, so contributing to a virtuous cycle in the church today, and I mean virtuous cycle because it does create a win-win-win, so to speak, for everybody. The church has the office. The church provides support, okay, in its writings. We have the means to educate and guide with MCI and BCS and all of our internet and media. And men are interested and need direction, okay? It creates more visible and well-trained participation by men as leaders in their parish, as well as being a visible sign of that to their family. Helps laity understand the beauty of the church in its fullest expression. Creates certified and well-trained ministers for parish life. Increases the qualified pipeline of servant leaders, potentially moving into higher orders. And another big one, generates ongoing support for the Metropolitan Cantor Institute and our very own Byzantine Catholic Seminary, which we definitely want to support. I don't know if you've had a chance to go on their website and look at their strategic plan, but it's a very good strategic plan. They just need the support, right? So any way to get that going, that happens to create a win-win for the church, for the seminary, for a local parish, for families. It benefits all of these arenas. And another thing on top of this is, oh, let me go back. I can't go back. Okay, never mind. So just thinking of the previous slide. The reality is we get so hung up on presbyteral vocations, all right, which is good. We need priests, obviously, okay? We need married priests. We need celibate priests. We need all of it, right? We also need deacons and we need minor orders, okay? And it is not secondary to presbyteral vocations. The reality is minor orders and the diaconate is a net multiplier. It's a force multiplier, okay? You add more men into minor orders, you're going to get more deacons. Get more deacons, you're going to get more priests, okay? That's just a virtuous cycle of vocations, all right? The barriers involved with direct entry, it really does eliminate and force men to stay in this perpetual cycle of discernment. And, you know, a negative Nancy might say, oh, well, they weren't really interested. It's like, no, you just need to change your paradigm a little bit and look at the circumstances of where this individual is coming from. Okay, vocational discernment is individual. We can't stereotype it, and we can't put it in just large boxes in order to justify inaction on things. The reality is minor orders beget greater orders, and it creates a virtuous cycle for the church. Okay, so I mean, you'll often hear just with the major orders of diaconate, it's like, well, we need to focus on presbyteral vocations, not diaconal offices. It's like, well, I don't know. I've met countless deacons because of their office have led young men to the seminary, right? That's even just an implicit connection. The explicit connection is in our church, minor orders, diaconate, simply generate more vocations to the priesthood. Fact. The end, right? So getting back to this slide, I had a call to action. Again, didn't want it to just be an academic presentation. I recommended creating an active working group, subcommittee, do a SWOT analysis and have those conclusions by the end of the year. Maybe do a survey that was a little bit better than the one that I did, right? My survey wasn't great and it was qualitative. I could probably have more reach if it was a little bit more systematically approached. At the end, I just gave my contact information as well as our website here in Waco. One thing I wanted to close on was, prior to my presentation, Bishop Kurt was interviewed by Father Cyril, who was one of the organizers of the assembly. And Bishop Kurt said, and I'll have to paraphrase, but he basically said, engaging and nurturing the charisms of the people should be our goal in the church. Okay, that really hit me because that's exactly what the minor orders are doing. We're meeting men where they are. The church is building that bridge as it should. So this is really what that's doing, is discovering and encouraging the growth of those charisms of our people in our church. Okay, so moving forward, this was basically a summary of informal summary of my presentation on minor orders. Next, like I said, I'm going to go into a talk on the prefigurement of the diaconate, mostly with the Levitical priesthood and the holy angels. Subsequently after that, I'm going to go into Christ the servant and how that's connected to the diaconate, and followed by the Apostolic Diaconate, and then what happened historically to that disorient the diaconate from the Apostolic Diaconate that I'll go into. So feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and support us that way. Go to our website, sign up to become a friend of the church, and you can email us at wacobyzantine@gmail.com as well if you don't want to email me directly. So thanks. God bless.